Hey everybody, Mac here. And before we get into the video, I want to give you an executive summary. Something new I've decided to do because I want you to listen to this. Because the way you develop wisdom in the valley of the shadow of death is that you take in knowledge, you beat that knowledge up, and if that knowledge is true, and what you're going to hear here is, what you come out with is something really strong, and that's wisdom. And it's from these discussions that you'll get that. So let me just give you a real quick breakdown of what you're going to hear in episode 5. This idea of transformation, it is not a highfalutin idea. It is not something lofty that, I read about and researched. None of that. I had no intention of ever doing anything like this because I didn't know it existed. All I set out to do was share with people what I had learned from all the interviews that I'd done on my podcast called All Marine Radio. I thought, if I share what I've learned, I know I can help people. That's all I intended to do. And then I did it. And then I had the mother of a young man that I helped reach out to me in an email and say, from a grateful mother. And I told her she didn't have to thank me, and she told me I didn't understand what I did. That woman changed my life because I didn't understand that I didn't change one person's life. I changed the lives of about 100 people. But I didn't know that, right? I was a novice at all of this. And what she really provided for me was something Viktor Frankl talks about, and that is giving your suffering meaning. And that's a transformational event. And that's all it is. So the word transformational sounds lofty. It's a very practical part of this path. So you're going to hear Wade, Tim, and I, and Wade and Tim come to it the same way. They don't even know it exists until they experience it. We'll also talk about very quickly this whole idea of struggling in life. It's one of the themes most written about on planet Earth. So there's a lot of religious writing done in the Bible about it. There's philosophy written about it. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a watershed person in history, and that is Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl writes a book called Man's Search for Meaning after he goes to the German concentration camps and his entire family's murdered. And he's the one that links meaning, finding meaning even in your darkest days. And if you can do that, you can transform your suffering. Frankl's a watershed person in this whole discussion. And then you're going to hear 5 basic things you should do. And like I said, this is not highfalutin stuff. That is all stuff that you could do. Every single bit of it. So with that said, that concludes the executive summary of the 5th episode of From Trauma to Joy. So let me introduce me to begin the podcast. See ya. Hey everybody, I'm Mac. Welcome to episode number 5 of the From Trauma to Joy podcast. I'm joined by Tim Lynch and by Wade Cates, as always. And so, again, the goal of this is to make you wiser and stronger so that you can transform your life and the lives of people around you. There's a path from trauma to joy. You can walk it. And then the only other thing I'll tell you before we start is we're here to help people. It's why we do this. When you like, share, and subscribe to this, your friends see that. And they may watch it themselves. They may reach out to you and say, hey, what's that about? That's a door opening for you to possibly save somebody's life. And we want you to do that because there's people around you that are struggling and you don't know it. So with all that said, we're going to talk about what I call Joe Blow transformation. Okay, what does that mean? It means transformation for anybody. Okay, when you hear the word transformation, I think most of us conjure up, I don't know, images of clouds and magical music playing, and that's not certainly how I experienced it, and it's not how I know Wade experienced it or Tim, and they'll speak for themselves. But so when I talk about transformation, I'm not talking about anything like that. I am talking about I didn't know shit, okay? And then in the interviews I did on a podcast I did called All Marine Radio, I would ask everybody as we talked about their experiences in life and going to war and stuff like that, how did you deal with it when you came home? And so from those interviews, I learned so much, right? And I heard a variation of the same story over and over, which is how this thing began, right? And then my next instinct as a leader was, hey man, I need to share this with people and help them. Okay, so that was just instinctively. So I did that. Here's what I didn't have any idea about, and what completely blew my vacuum tubes. The first person I ever really helped using this is a guy named Luke who lives in Huntsville, Alabama, and I helped him. But I've helped people in my life. I didn't realize what I was doing when I was helping people in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. I then have an email exchange with his mother, who thanks me. I tell her, you don't need to thank me. I'd do anything for your kid, because I would. And she emailed me back and she said, you don't get it. You don't know what you did, which was a little bit surprising to me. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, my family, me, my husband, I used to lay in bed at night and pray to God my son wouldn't kill himself. My husband could not reach our son. His brother couldn't reach his brother. His fiancée, her family, my brothers and sisters all live within a 5-mile radius of us. We're all watching Luke's Dance with Death. You don't realize the number of people whose life that you've impacted by doing what you did. And honestly, I didn't. And, I call that moment the Grinch moment. When the Grinch hears the Who people sing and his heart grows 3 times. And so I didn't learn this in a book. I stumble into it. Actually, I'm yanked into it by the mother of somebody I help. That's how I experience this. So when I say this is Joe Blow, Jane Blow, whoever Blow stuff, it's everyday stuff for everyday people, because that's the way I experienced it. And that's the way I teach it. And so this the whole idea of transforming your life. It's not physics. It's not rocket science. It is hard work. It is anchored in the truth, and you can do it. So, Wade, talk to me about how you stumble into this. You don't have, I don't believe you had any harps playing or flutes playing as you stumbled your way into this. Did you?
No, I came to this just very normal path, normal as we are, which is that's up for debate. But no, it's once a friend of mine connected me with Mac, started going through this stuff, and it started applying the principles. It's not an acid trip. The freaking Grateful Dead didn't show up, and the Dancing Bears and all that. It was just the transformation just began, and you could see how the mindset is what brings the transformation. It's not that suddenly there's no problem, suddenly pain doesn't feel like pain anymore, grief doesn't feel like grief anymore. It's just suddenly you have tools to start handling these things. I use the sailboat analogy all the time, right? If you're a good sailor, it doesn't matter if it's a good day, a stormy day, or a good sailing day. You know how to control the ship, right? You know how to control the situation. And that's the transformation for me. It was not, angels singing in the background and little naked cherubs flying around, and everything was peaceful and calm and no pain. To me, that's when you're dead. There's a great movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven. You should watch that. And there's a line from that where the main dog gets hit by a car, doesn't realize he's dead, and he's got this beautiful dog, bouncing around him singing this song. It's like, you can do whatever you want now that you're dead. And he's like, what? Anyway, um, it wasn't anything ethereal. It's just calmness and the peace of knowing that no matter what is going on, I can sail through this and be effective, right? You're not just getting beat up by the storm. You know how to adjust your sails, your ships, you tight batten the hatches, and you can move through the storm. Or if it's a good day, you know how to run up the sails, make the most of the wind, and cover some good distance. It just depends. Your attitude and your feelings do not depend on the weather or what's going on around you. It gives you the transformation was having the tools to adapt to the situation. And let me restate the last part of that. The real transformation is when you take the little things, the things that you've learned, and you help someone else. You know, I knew when we lost Juan that I could not sit on the sidelines anymore. I'm not, you know, I'm not exactly media material. You can tell by looking at me or listening to me. But I knew that I had to find a way to use the voice that I have to tell one story and help other people. So I just started telling one story the best I could. And as I learned things, you could see the roadmap of how this should be done and how you help someone build a foundation and you transform your own world. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it literally transforms the way you see everything when you can help someone else and show them how to do this.
Timmy, talk about again your very, very hard road to transformation, and give me your thoughts on, was it anything highfalutin? Was it just hard work and truthful statements and then building a life? How did you come to this idea of believing that you could actually use your pain to help somebody else?
Well, you know, I was conducting the long slog out of the deep hole I had dug for myself. And around the time that I was doing that, you started All Marine Radio, and I was a faithful listener because I had lots of time to listen, driving my pickup all over South Texas to the oil fields. And I heard the same things you heard. I was slowly but surely climbing out, but although I'm a disciplined person in some areas, I wasn't a disciplined person in all areas. And it suddenly started to make sense when I applied ruthless fiscal discipline to my situation. And all of a sudden I'm out of the valley and I'm seeing light, like I'm making progress. I had the physical fitness piece down. I had tamped down the self-medicating piece to acceptable level, but suddenly I started seeing progress, and then I stopped the self-medicating bullshit entirely, and started concentrating on the fundamentals of putting together a life worth living, and that got me to the point where I was of use to my fellow man when he was in distress, which was an awesome feeling.
And your work with the Bar X project now, that's what you do, right? You bring people to Montana, you take them fly fishing, but that's not what Bar X is about. Bar X is about transformation. And so now that's what you do in your personal life. What was that like to see that whole thing and to be a part of that?
Well, that Bar X project is quite special, and there's a couple of things that make it special. The first is we're bringing together very small cohorts of guys that serve together in combat. So this isn't strangers just showing up at a veteran event, because I've been to one of those and it was I didn't get anything out of it at all. I kind of felt it irritating, to be honest. So we bring guys that have known each other, haven't seen each other in some cases for 20 years, put them in a rather rustic environment in Montana, take them fly fishing, and then turn you loose on them. And the effects are are quite profound. There's no question that getting out into nature, away from cell phones and video screens, is of help. There's no question that getting together with people who you are very, very tight and close to, regardless of the situation, whether it's a former guys you played football with, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be military dudes, but there's no question that helps. And then finding yourself in a situation where you're promoting talking, where you're promoting having discussions about things that have impacted you, because these guys that we work with have all of them experienced fellow guys from their units committing suicide. I mean, every friggin' one of those units have had that curse. And so,
well, and again, let me just so everybody knows what you're talking about is people that you have an intimate relationship,
mm-hmm.
right? And so if whoever's listening to this, it could be your close friends and you together, and then in terms of the suicide discussions, so much of the discussions are about, how whoever grew up and what they came into the Marine Corps with, and then after they served together, what they went back to, whether they were drinkers, whether they got divorced, whether they were alone, and all of that. So it's a very human tale. It is not a tale about the specific traumatic events that they experienced together. And so when we say this is an anybody thing, that's what these discussions center around, which is the life struggle that we all participate in.
Yeah, and just to make sure everybody understands, combat's got nothing to do with these incidences. What we're dealing with is guys who are angry because whoever it was that took his life didn't have the decency to call them and ask for help. That's what they struggle with. But it isn't this combat that did it. I just want to make that clear.
No, and it's that very human struggle, right? It's that very human struggle that we all go through that I hope you see illustrated. But the larger point I want to make when I say this is blue collar transformation, that this is Joe Blow transformation, is that none of us are quoting philosophers and books we read about it and how we did it. We can do that now because we have read about it and we're all readers and we're all students of this. But at the time that we experienced it, it's not the way we came to this. I myself, again, was drugged to the transformation piece, which was shocking to me. I thought it would be really cool to teach people what I learned about, and Wade described it as you learn these things that are true, as you learn there's nothing wrong with you, as you learn this is a normal life struggle. I'm learning that because people are teaching me, and then I think it'll be great. I could teach people this skill, and then I go through this experience of helping somebody else, still not understanding what I did, and then I have somebody's mom yank my ass into that, and it was absolutely stunning to me. And I remember not being able to go to sleep that night. But again, nothing is a master's in philosophy. It's not that. It is living your life experience that created my transformational experience. And we'll come back to this idea, but again, all I was trying to do was pass on what I learned, what I did, and what had helped me. That's all I was doing. I wasn't trying to be the Oracle of Delphi or, the smartest dude in the room. All I did was wanted to share, this is what worked for me. And so that's where ultimately this will go. I want to talk about these ideas in history, though, because there's probably two ideas that have been written about forever as kind of man has wrestled with existence. And one is, why am I here? Where did I come from? And the next one is, life is a struggle. Why is my struggle so difficult? So, Wade, do you want to talk about, so it's been written about forever, and you can go trace it back into the Old Testament. But there was always a theological link with early man. Is God has somehow done this to me, or there's a reason he understands it, I don't. So you want to talk about trying to come to grips with our struggle and the why, which gets you to the transformation piece. But in history, certainly in the Bible, it's written about extensively.
Yeah, and I mean the answer to why we suffer, I think, is in the very beginning of the book of Genesis. If you read the origin text, it plainly says that once Adam and Eve did what they did, then their punishment was to be basically sentenced, and their descendants would be sentenced to decay, which means you're going to live as a full human now, right? Which means you're susceptible to everything, disease, pain in childbirth, death, grief, all that is yours. So when, I I push back against the ideology that absolutely everything happens to you because God wants it to happen to you. That that's not true, and it can't be true because, if that's true, God's up there with a ledger marking off how many babies he's going to kill today, how many teenagers are going to commit suicide, how many women are going to be raped, how many children are going to be raped. That's not the way this works. You are subject to the human condition, which means you have a capacity for great goodness and a capacity for great evil, and you have the divine right of free will, right? You choose, right? But suffering comes simply from the fact that you're human. You're not infallible and you're not perfect. So that's where this comes from. And the book of Job is a book of suffering. Job lost everything, including his children, and they come to talk to him about, well, what did you do, and how did you cause this, and how do you need to fix this? When none of those events were in Job's control. The book of Lamentations is in the Bible to lament. Everybody knows John 3:16. Most everybody. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, and whoever believes in him shall have eternal life. Few people know Leviticus 3:16, which 3:16 through about verse 20. I can't quote it directly, but it's like, you've turned my dreams into gravel in my teeth. Everything that I wanted is dead and gone. There's no joy and there's no purpose. Now, if you read the book of Lamentations fully, you will see it's not a totally pessimistic book, but I think it's put there to let us know that, hey, I don't care who you are. There's a good chance you're going to end up at some point in life where all your dreams have faded away. Maybe someone you love dearly is gone. Maybe you've been hurt by the person who you cherish the most. And you're going to be in this position that no matter what you do, you feel like your teeth are grinding on gravel, right? That's the human condition. But that is where surfing comes from. And I push back on, I know what people mean when they say it. Find meaning from your suffering. There's no meaning in suffering. You're suffering because you're human. You have to find meaning in spite of your suffering and then use what you learn from your suffering to good. That's what it means. But sometimes people throw that out and it's like they're saying this was done by design, so just accept it. And that's what I push back on, because that's not true. You suffer because you're human. Learn from your suffering, learn how to get through it, and then help someone else. That will give meaning from the suffering, not meaning in the suffering.
And you could see this why am I struggling? Why me? Why was this done to me? This is a theme in the Bible. It's also a theme in philosophy. To me, the Stoics address this, right? The Stoics, if you're not familiar with them, they wrote about how to do hard things. And so, you'll see these things certainly in Stoic writing.
Yeah, I mean, the Stoic is basically tries to bring inner peace by changing the way you interpret events. That's what Stoicism is in a nutshell all about. And there's a lot of motivational things you can read about Stoicism. The other philosophy I like is Nietzsche. because Nietzsche thinks Stoicism is for pansies and girly men because he thinks they're too passive. Nietzsche says that you got to use your suffering to you have to drive through it in order to achieve greatness. Not that there's meaning in suffering. Neither one of them believe that. But both of these philosophies take a very unique view of how you're interpreting what's happening to you. Because both of them are rooted in the natural order of things. That's the big thing with the Stoics, too. Suffering's going to happen. This is the natural order. Things are born, people die, pain and suffering and disease happen, etc. Boy, it really happened to Nietzsche. Boy, he got to experience a lot of that towards the end of his rather short, tragic life. But you can find a lot of things that will motivate you to help you stay on that track, because when you're down in the valley, man, climbing out isn't a one-day event. I don't care what the shamans tell you. It's a long haul, and in order to do the long haul, having the proper mental attitude is much easier if you avail yourself of some ancient wisdom from crazy German dudes and the Stoics.
Well, and to me, what's interesting about, you'll hear from the Stoics is you only control one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that is how you respond. Nietzsche's thing and another guy, and we'll talk about Viktor Frankl here in a second, and his contribution to all of this is that life by default is a struggle. Life by default is painful, and there's moments of happiness in it, but by default, life's the struggle, which is not how a lot of people looked at it. Like that life is painful and then episodically it's happy. So you see this coming to grips with the struggle, and then how you transcend the struggle. Okay. And so Viktor Frankl, who's written one of the great books of wellness, which is entitled Man's Search for Meaning. He's a psychiatrist. I was reading about him the last couple of days. At 16 years of age, he writes Sigmund Freud a letter. Right? Right. And then he writes some other stuff, and Freud has Frankl published when he's just he's barely an adult living in Vienna. He then goes on to become a psychiatrist because he was very interested in people, and he had a knack for seeing people's problems and helping them. And so he wanted to become initially a doctor, then he becomes a psychiatrist. World War II begins. He's Jewish. He and his entire family go into the concentration camp system. Everybody in his family is killed in those camps. He survived. In 1946, he publishes the first edition of Man's Search for Meaning. And Frankl is influenced by Nietzsche and another guy named Schopenhauer. But again, they have some very, very dark things, that life is about suffering. You're not going to get away from it. But what Frankl's life experience taught him, and he has this quote, that humans are the people that built those concentration camps and those crematoriums. They're also the people that helped each other in those dark, dark circumstances. And I wish I could remember the Jewish prayer that he talks about, that we're reciting the something Israel prayer and the Our Father, when they were led into those gas chambers as noble human beings. And then, and his conclusion is, even in the darkest of suffering, none of which you would either choose or wish on somebody else, man can still find meaning in that suffering and still acquit himself in a way that transforms his life. And so Frankl's, to me, a transformational person in all of us, because he links the suffering to this noble endeavor of transformation. Wade, thoughts on that? Timmy, thoughts on that?
There is such a thing as the evolution of knowledge. I don't mean knowledge of evolution as in creation or whatever, but I mean how knowledge develops over time. in the timeline of human existence, we've actually known of bacteria a very short time. And if you take the marker from when bacteria was discovered to where now, it's advanced so much. The Stoics developed a very brilliant philosophy, but it only went so far, right? And then Nietzsche built on it, and then Frankl builds on it. It's like there is the evolution of knowledge. The Stoics didn't necessarily believe they should better themselves. They believed they should be happy to exist where they are. So they didn't have the philosophy of self-development. Nietzsche was a fascinating character. There's some things that I disagree with on, but his view of religion was highly affected by the knowledge of the time, which was wrong. The leading minds of his time were disputing the origins of the Gospels, right? So the point is these people made very solid philosophies based on what they know at the time. And that's what we have to do now, is take what we know, apply the philosophies that apply, but then advance to the next level as well.
Timmy?
He's not the Socrates of the semi for nothing, is he? That was very well said. I mean, what more can you say? It is hard to imagine somebody who's had a bigger impact on more lives than Viktor Frankl. And he's one of those gifts to humanity. But I like what Wade said. So I'll just say that. I like what Wade said.
No, again, but what I want people to see is this theme of struggling. Why am I struggling? Why is this happening to me? And then looking for an answer to that. And I think the first answers were theological. In a previous life, you did something to earn this, or this is God's will, and you shouldn't question it. But you see this quest for an answer. And so the struggle, and then thinking that I can use my pain to transform my suffering and feel different about it is truly unique. So let me walk down this path of Joe Blow, Jane Blow transformation. The first thing you do is you learn. And the things that in these discussions where we talk about things like you're not going to get over it, you have to learn to coexist with it. Those kind of things. And it's got to be anchored in the truth. It's got to be irrefutable. And so the things that we talk about are. Why is that important? So you can build on it. You can lean on it when life gets hard. You can lean on these very, very sturdy anchors because they're going nowhere, because they're 1,000% true. Next, your foundation. Things that you control. How much you drink. How much money you save. Are you physically active? Do you fake like you're okay with your best friends when you're not? Are you willing not to fake it? Do you have the courage not to fake it? And then have a conversation about that. You control every bit of that. That's job number 2. Job number 3 is once you begin to do that, and Timmy talked about it, how much his life changed when he began to get his financial life together. And what did that do? Think about trauma is all these weight plates that are on top of him. And then you soak it in alcohol, and then you're struggling financially. That's a lot of weight. And part of it, you're enabling. Well, when you stop enabling it, when you stop the drinking, when you begin to save your money and your financial stress calms down, that's noticeable. I don't care who does it. Everybody I talk to and watch who does this will tell you the same thing. Holy shit, man. I can't believe that in a month and a half how different I feel. And what do they feel? They feel a decrease in stress in their personal life. But the second thing they feel is more control. And they're affected by, I did something that caused this. I do have control. And you watch this. But again, that's just the foundation, things that you control. And then on top of that, what you can learn is, how do you deal with anxiety? How do you deal with anger? Learning how to breathe to interrupt anger and anxiety. Learning that when I feel that, I need to go remove myself from this thing and go for a walk. If you'll just do those 2 things, nothing else, watch how quickly you can begin to short circuit your anger and anxiety. And you're not going to make it go away, but you're going to give it an outlet that calms it down. And so when I talk about infrastructure, meditation, learning how to calm your brain down and doing it in a way that works for you. I always joke, I don't know that people that are serious about meditation would look at me and say, yeah, you meditate, but I don't care what they say. I know how to breathe in my nose, out my mouth. I know how to calm myself down, and I do that. And if I have to do it a couple times a day or 2 or 3 times a day, I do that. And that's the infrastructure I'm talking about. And then the glue in all of this, and the fourth thing you have to learn how to be is more disciplined. In every part of my life, the more disciplined I am, the better my life gets. Whether it's my relationship with my kids, financially, physically. I don't know if you can notice how rocked up I am right now, but I am, okay? Is that pleasant? No. It means every day I get up and I go into the gym I have in my garage and I go do that. I'd rather lay my ass in bed, but I don't, because I know this is better for me because of the endorphins that it dumps into my brain. And so it's doing that. And I mean, there's a line from a Will Smith video that self-discipline is truly an act of self-love. And I believe that in my heart of hearts, but that's the glue that holds it all together. You can know all this shit, and that's great. But if you won't fucking do it, then it doesn't do you any good. But again, it's learning these things. And when you do that and your life changes, there's this irresistible force in you when you meet somebody else that's struggling. And they're normally a friend, or maybe sometimes it's not for me, but all of a sudden you hear about their struggle. And you sit there and you're like, hey, I'd like to tell you some stuff that has really helped me. And it's almost irresistible. You want to, because of how your own life has changed, how dark it used to be, how alone it used to feel. But it doesn't feel like that all the time anymore. Some days you have hard days, no doubt about it, because this stuff doesn't go away. But you know how to do this. You know how to walk this path. So when I talk about this transformation, this Joe Blow transformation, this transformation for anybody, this is what we're talking about. It's not fat little cherubs blowing trumpets. That's not what's going on here. Okay, this is hard work, it's blue collar shit, and it's anchored in the truth. So give me your thoughts on transformation for anybody, Wade.
Well, it's said a million times, but it's true. If I can do it, you can do it. Come on, look at me. Once the process is shown to you, once we talk about this stuff, for me, it was just an aha moment. It wasn't anything fantastic. It was actually pretty simple, but it's laying it out as how this is done. It's just like, I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I was listening to my daily readings this morning from Scripture, and it was the story of Naaman, the captain of Syria, who has leprosy, and he hears there's a prophet in Israel who can heal it. So he goes sees the prophet. The prophet doesn't even come out to talk to him. He says, "Hey, go wash in the Jordan River," which kind of offended the Syrian commander of all the Syrian armies, who was second to the king, that this prophet told him to go wash in this mud hole, right? Which is basically what the Jordan River was at the time of the year it was. And he got mad and went off. Well, finally, one of the captain's, this commander's servants came up to him and said, "Hey, if he'd asked you to do some great thing, wouldn't you have gone and done it? Why don't you just go do the simple thing?" And he does it, and he gets rid of the leprosy. Point being is, you don't have to be Forrest Gump running across the country, or Tim or walk across the country. You don't have to ascend to the mountaintop. You don't have to go do ayahuasca and commune with the gods. Just do the simple things that we tell you, because they're proven things that work. I mean, you can build these elaborate schemes, but just do the simple things.
Timmy?
I agree with Wade.
You already
No.
You already said that. You can't use that more than once.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, shit, I should have waited for this one. Because that wife
from now on, you could go before Wade, okay? That way, I'll take that card away.
No. It seems to be so simple when you say just do the self-discipline thing, this isn't rocket science. It's just consistency. Because once you're consistently self-disciplined, you develop into habits. And having habits that are helpful rather than harmful is a good way to live a quality life. It couldn't be more simple. But it sure is hard to do when you're down in that damn valley looking up thinking, I'm never going to get out of here. How am I going to get out of here? And it's just a matter of a consistent application of self-love in the form of self-discipline. And eventually one day you'll wake up and you'll say, ooh, my finances aren't bad at all. Or, ooh, I've actually got a very good relationship now with my wife. Or, ooh, these kind of things that make life worth living, they don't occur without consistent effort on your part. It couldn't be more simple. But then again, doing the simple thing is never the easy thing.
And again, the place that it takes you, I mean, for me, my conversation with Libby, laying in bed that night, my thoughts were, I didn't even realize the best part of all of this that I thought was going to be so good. In my ignorance, as I stumbled down this path, I thought sharing this was going to be the thing. I'm going to share this. That turns out that sharing is the path is just the teaching part of it. What you see and then what you experience when you watch somebody, you watch a miracle. You watch somebody who's been sexually abused as a child, and you tell them, look, you're never going to get over it. You're going to have to learn to coexist with it. All that makes sense to them. And so on days they struggle, they're gentle with themselves. And then they call you up one day and say, you don't realize what you've done for me. You talk about humbling experiences and all you're doing is sharing this thing that you're very excited about because what it did for me, how it changed my life. And again, the simple phrase we use, if I can do it, you can do it. And then once you do it, all I want you to do is share it with somebody. And people want to do that. It's almost like you can't help yourself. Like, yeah, I'll talk to you. Come here, sit down. And again, the transformation is as pragmatic as the truth. So when you look at somebody and say, you're not going to get over it, what do they say? Nothing, because it's the truth, right? And then the very pragmatic path that this lays out, the transformation piece is just as pragmatic because it grows naturally out of your personal growth and then your desire to help somebody else. And as human beings, one of our innate desires is to be helpful to our fellow man. And that's all we're talking about doing here. You know, you don't have to go on YouTube and talk about this shit. Will you help the people around you? Will you help your friends? Will you help your family members? Because there's no shortage of people that are struggling. And again, I'm fond of quoting Robin Williams, who may have stole the quote from somebody else, but he said, be kind to everyone you meet because they are fighting a fight you know nothing about. And that's the truth, man. That's the truth. I meet people to this day who will look at me and say, tell me a story. And I knew them as kids. I knew them growing up. I didn't have any idea what was going on inside their home, the pain they were living with, whether it was caused by abuse or alcoholism or domestic violence or what. I had no idea. And they've borne that burden in silence and in solitude for almost a lifetime. And then you get to watch it change. And that's this joyful moment. And that is the transformation. That is what it is to transcend your suffering. And what Frankl talks about is finding meaning in your suffering. And that's how you do it. It's not tricky. There's nothing hooky-roo about it. It is a very, very plain path that makes a lot of sense, that's anchored in the truth, and sharing it is as natural as any other step. You know, in fact, Wade just, since we began doing these things, a guy reached out to me and wanted to meet Wade because he had, I believe, a son who did almost the same thing that Juan did. Wade, that interaction for you is why you began, is what you knew you had to do, right?
Absolutely.
What is it like when you begin to talk to somebody like that for you? I mean, it must be a very, very deep and profound, joyful in the deepest sense of the word moment for you.
Yeah, and it is. It's humbling, but it's like you're ready for it. I mean, but if you're on a 727 and you're not the pilot, you're a passenger, but you have 15,000 hours flying a 727 yourself, and the pilot passes out, you're not panicked. You feel good. You know what to do, right? You could step in and take the plane. You've got all the experience. You know how this works, and you can land the plane, right? But when you see someone who is in the exact same place that you were in, just totally overwhelmed and at a complete loss of knowing what to do, how to do, just absolute gut punch. I mean, I don't know how to put that into words. It's just like you're just laying in a muddy ditch. You can't catch your breath. But
but again, you know that ditch, right?
Oh yeah,
right,
I've been
right,
there.
right. And I talk about that as the valley of the shadow of death. And when I say that, people seize on it, right?
Yep.
I know that place.
Yeah, probably more than once, but yeah, I've been there. And it just gives you that. I don't know if it's real or not, but when I was in Okinawa, there was a service with a chaplain there he was a very senior chaplain. He'd been doing it a long time, but his role had led him to be able to go to the greatest cathedrals in the world and to study there and to minister there. He spent time at the Vatican. He spent time in the Vatican archives, all the great cathedrals of the world. But he says, where I felt the most useful and the closest to God is when I'm sitting in some dive bar in some nasty harbor town with a sailor or Marine sitting across from me telling me how crappy their life is and how horrible mistakes they have made. And they say, what do I do now? I can't take away the past. I can't correct all their mistakes, but I can guide them from where they are now. And, it doesn't matter how high you ascend, and I hope you accomplish great things. When you can reach into the darkness and help a fellow human being around, there is nothing you'll ever do in this life that'll beat that.
To echo Wade's comments, I've been asked, Mac, of all the stuff you've done as a Marine, as a leader, as an officer of Marines in combat, and then now the work you do now. What is the most profound leadership experience? And I've been blessed in my life. I've been a leader since I was a little kid. And the most profound leadership experiences in my life are in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And my leadership experiences in the Marine Corps are absolutely incredible. But the Valley of the Shadow of Death, when you lead there, it is the deepest, most profound service that you can render on this planet, which is really to be an archangel for somebody, to guide them, as Wade said. I know the Valley of the Shadow of Death. I've lived there. I've spent a lot of time there. I'm now an archangel there. I find people there, and I look at them and say, no, there's a path. You can walk it. And to anybody watching this, you can walk this. If we can do it, you can do it. And there's nothing tricky about it. But that experience and the joy that comes from that, the pride that comes from that, as you watch somebody change their life and transform their life, there's the closest experience in my life is my experience with my children, watching my kids as they've grown up, in particular as they become parents and become responsible adults. The pride you feel of watching the same transformation is the pride I feel. Timmy, your thoughts on this whole moment of joy and when you help somebody else? Because Timmy does a lot of it, kind of on the down low. We do group stuff, and Timmy will help people in our group. And as he's a writer, he's written about people and things like that. How do you describe it, Tim?
Well, there's a certain amount of self-satisfaction that comes when you give of yourself to somebody, give your time, give your experience, just be there for them. It is so gratifying because, I mean, it's not hard. It's getting outside of your own little selfish needs and stuff like that and being able to help somebody. There's no other feeling like it, quite frankly. It's a tremendous good way of living, again, living the best life you're going to live. Because you don't have a great life by yourself. You have a great life when you're able to impact positively other people. And I like sitting in dive bars too. So shit, I should be doing some of that Chaplin was doing. I didn't think about that. I could spend some time there, but in all seriousness, no, it's hard to describe. The key part is being willing to give of your time to somebody who needs a little bit of your help, and not being stingy with your time. I've got all the time in the world for anybody who knows me and people who don't know me that feel they could use my help, and it's just very gratifying. It's better than the endorphins you generate working out, which is gratifying. I'm an endorphin junkie myself, but this is 10 times better because you know it's the right thing to do, and there's not many places or episodes in life where you know what exactly the right thing to do is. Just giving of yourself. So I'm a big proponent.
Well, and the thing that again I most want people to know is that all of us come to these ideas guided by somebody else. Right? And so this is transcending your pain. This is giving your suffering meaning, what Frankl described. And the other thing that is a huge theme in Frankl's writings is being a responsible human being and not a selfish human being. One of Frankl's great lines is, in the United States, there is a Statue of Liberty on the East Coast. He says there should be a Statue of Responsibility on the West Coast, which is the alpha and the omega of you are free, but you need to live responsibly. And I think living responsibility is this path that we've laid out, which is understanding the truth, being the best version of yourself and constantly striving to be better. And then it's creating infrastructure to help with your flaws. It's living disciplined. And if you'll do that, there's just unmistakable human urge to help other people. And that's this path. It is, and again, we were all brought to it by other people, not by any PhD or any German, philosopher or any Greek philosopher. Every one of us comes to this via conversation with other human beings. And if we can do that, you can do that. Wade, a final thought about this whole idea of transformation.
It is just the daily repetition of the simple techniques, right? The discipline, things you have to do for yourself, and then the transformation comes when you can turn and help someone else. There's a standing joke about Facebook memes that sound good until you think about what they actually say, and they're just meaningless words. But I saw one that I haven't ever forgotten. It's like, it was talk. I can't quote it exactly, but it was. It said, here's to the ones who walked through hell, but came back with buckets of water for those who were still on fire. And that's kind of what we do. We've been through hell, but we know how to get out. And I'm coming with a bucket of water. If I can help you, let me know. You're not going to get any high philosophy from me just because, hey, I'm in a 20-year-old Peterbilt. I don't really have access to that stuff, but I will talk to you about what I know and what I know works.
And again, that is the single criteria for all of this. What actually works. What actually works, what actually helps. And as I went down this path, that was the litmus test. Well, does that work? Is it true? Does it work? Okay, it does. Let me put it in my pocket. I got that. Pick up the next little piece of bread on the trail. Timmy, final thought on transformation.
Well, you got to get your reps in. You got to get your reps in and how you're living your life in a disciplined way. I'm going to use a baseball analogy, even though I'm a lacrosse man. I don't like baseball much. But you're what do they call that when you're in the warm-up circle? What's that called?
The on-deck circle.
Yeah, because you're on deck. You get your reps in when you're on deck because you don't know when somebody's going to call you into the batter's box. If I've got that analogy right, I would just say get in your reps, and I would also caution you about dive bars. Unless you're really experienced like a Navy captain or like me, I'd stay the hell out of them. That's just my thoughts on the matter.
Solid advice right there.
Yeah. Just in case you didn't figure that out yet, I would stay the hell away from them.
No, again, I think that when people hear these discussions talking about transformation, they kind of roll their eyes. But the biggest thing I want people to understand is this is blue collar transformation, man. This is for anybody. And I'm not going to go down the path that we already outlined. But the big message is if we can do it, you can do it. And the deep, profound experiences that we've all had are waiting for you. If you'll simply, number one, do the work that it's going to take for you to become a better version of yourself, a stronger version of yourself, and constantly work at that. Be disciplined about it. And then two, if you'll do that, and once your life begins to change, there is this irresistible urge when you meet somebody who's struggling with the same things you were struggling with. Life has been hard on them, and they're not physically fit. They do go to dive bars, and even worse, once they're in the dive bar, they drink a lot, and so you can help them. And so that helping somebody else injects a joy that will overwhelm your suffering. So the whole trauma to joy thing, your trauma is there forever, not going away. What we do is we slowly but surely overwhelm our trauma with joy until joy becomes the dominant emotion in our lives. Not to say that there isn't pain and trauma still in my life. There is. But as Wade is doing with somebody who reached out to him, when you can change somebody's life, there's no feeling like it. And that's all this is. And that's what transformation is. And again, if we can do it, you can do it. So again, don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe to this. Why? Because we want you to open doors for yourself that will do this. And the way you can start doing it is by making sure other people know that you're interested in the subject. So don't be afraid to do that. If you have a question or comment, you can email me, Mac, at FromTraumaToJoy.com, or you can find links to get in touch with me or anybody here on whatever social media platform you're watching this on. So don't be afraid to do that. With that said, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Pleasure.
And you
Pleasure
could
to be here again.
And you could go into dive bars. Just be careful what you do in the dive bars. You don't necessarily have to drink alcohol in the dive bar.
No, that's that. I'm just saying, because I'm a pro at that kind of thing. So I'm just giving everybody.
And if you want some very pragmatic advice, order a Coke, get a lime, drop the lime in the Coke. Nobody will say shit to you. Okay. Nobody will say shit to you. You can spend as much time as you care to in a dive bar with a lime, and you can put the lime in 7-Up. You can put the lime in water. Nobody says shit if there's a lime in it. If there's no lime in it, though, people are going to say, what are you drinking? Coke. If there's a lime in it, they assume there's some alcohol in the glass. So
yeah, and for the uninitiated, a dive bar is not referred to a tourist bar where divers are. It's a bit more negative than that.
But always interesting, and most of the time a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
there's a reason.
You might get your cardio before you get out of there if you're not careful.
All right. It's all part of living the adventure. All right, man. Thank you very much.
Y'all have a good week.
Take care, man.